But when we talk about mass incarceration, we often are talking about people in prison. A lot of what Katie was talking about before. If we really want to change the way the flow is, we need to change the front door, which are people who are in jail.
And people who are in jail. Prisons are where you go after you've been sentenced and convicted to serve your time. Jails are where you wait before you've even gone to trial. At the Vera Institute of Justice, we think reforming the front door of the mass incarceration pipeline really needs to begin at prison, and that's why we've been putting a lot of effort into changing that front door. But we knew that we needed to change the narrative around it because people really weren't talking about jail as a real problem. So about 18 months ago, we decided to really try and change that narrative, change the national conversation around jail. And I'm going to take you on the journey that we've been going on for the past 18 months. We had two core strategies we used. One is data, which is very familiar to us, and the other was human stories, which was a sort of new terrain for us. So let me give you examples of both. Where are people from? I'm from New York City. I'm sure a lot of you are from Washington, D.C., where this great event is being hosted. I know Hollywood is in the house, which is kind of intimidating to me. So there's people from the West Coast. I want to give a shout out to Chicago. That's where the MacArthur Foundation is located, and MacArthur shares Vera's goal of really reducing jail incarceration and so tackling mass incarceration in that way, and has funded and supported a lot of the work I'm talking about today. But is anybody from like a small town, Dearborn, Indiana, say, okay, I see some hands up, Lackawanna County? We share in common that we have a jail in our backyard. There are 3,000 counties in the United States, and there are 3,000 jails. If you want to change the narrative around jails, if you want to change that conversation, it has to really spread broadly to all those different counties. Another thing we share, and this is what you can see in this, you see this moving colors here, is this data visualization that some of my Brainiac colleagues put together. You can go and see the change in the number of people in jail over the past few decades. It's changed dramatically from 1970 till now, 4 times as many people in jail. And a headline piece of news on that, the driver of that change is not you big city folks. It's really the small county folks, you folks who raise your hands. The rate of people in jail there has gone up 7-fold. So again, the narrative has to be changed in a lot of different places. So what are some of the stories that we pulled out of this data? Well, there's 12 million jail admissions every year. That's 19 times the rate of admissions to prison. Who are the people in jail? They're disproportionately people of color. Blacks are 4 times more likely to be in jail than whites. They have mental health issues, about half of them. People in jail are poor. Remember, jail is where you go to wait for your trial. You're presumed innocent. But 75% of people in jail, there for nonviolent, low-level offenses, are too poor to pay bail and wait out in the community. So they can't afford the $500 or $300. You could drown in this data. Or you could drown in tears if you look at some of the stories. So this was our other strategy, was to tell the stories of the people that back up that data. Meet Dolphinette Martin. She's part of the Human Toll of Jail project that Katie referenced in introducing me, which is 10 stories of people who are in jail or are working in jails to try to put a human face on the data I just gave to you. So Dolphinette, she lives in New Orleans, one of the cities in America with the highest jail incarceration rates. She, in 1994, she was 24 years old, 5 months pregnant, and she shoplifted $300 worth of merchandise from a local Macy's. She was thrown in jail, and in jail she sat for 60 days. That was the legal limit that she could be there before she actually went to trial, so that never even happened. While she was in jail, did she see a doctor? No. Dolphinette told us that prenatal care consisted of graham crackers and a pint of milk. Maybe that's why, when she was released, now 7 months pregnant, she gave birth a week later to her very premature little girl. Dauphinette's life spiraled down at this point. And this is what happens, folks. This is what happens to people who are in jail. Research shows that even 2 days of time spent in jail reduces your chances for future jobs, increases your chances for being caught back up in the justice system. And Dauphinette was. She was arrested over 10 years for many low-level offenses, often crimes of survival to support her children. I'm going to come back to Dauphinette a little later. She did turn her life around. Actually, I've been fortunate enough to call her a colleague. She worked with us in our New Orleans office at Vera. And again, I'll come back to her. But I'm going to spool us back to 18 months ago when we decided to go on this journey and really try and change the national conversation. So what we did is what Vera commonly does, which is raise the data flag, put out a report that sets out the lay of the land. It's called Incarceration's Front Door, the Misuse of Jails in America. And that's a kind of grabby headline, and it worked because we're just astonished by the amount of media attention we got. The New York Times, the Washington Post, a BuzzFeed listicle, Vice, and my favorite headline from Gawker, local jails are insatiable monsters. Yeah. People were paying attention, and back on the home front, my colleagues and I, from research, from program, from my communications team, we were like, we're on to something. We're making a difference here. What else can we do? And that's what birthed the Human Toll of Jail project, was to try and use sort of bespoke editorial to tell the stories that back up the data. So you met Dauphinette. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of other people because there's themes and variations in the way we tried to tell the story. Dauphinette showed a really wonderful portrait showing her human dignity, which we wanted to convey, and had a great narrative profile. I'm going to introduce you to Patrick. Patrick had a complicated story. It's called Return to Rikers. He was 20 years ago in Rikers Island Jail, a notorious jail in New York City. And he did get sent away to prison. He wanted to preserve his anonymity, and so we chose to tell his story using comic graphics, as you see here. When Patrick was in prison, he wanted to show his son that things could change, that he didn't have to be defined by this experience of prison. So he got his GED. He wasn't a high school graduate. His GED, his associate's degree, his bachelor's degree, his master's degree. In 2013, Patrick came home, reunited with his family. But in 2015, Patrick was back at Rikers Island Jail. This time, he was on the other side of the bars. He was visiting his son, Patrick Jr., who had gone to jail. He was on a gun charge. You see, this is what happens. Incarceration affects families. 2.7 million children have an incarcerated parent, and they are at grave risk of being caught up in the justice system themselves, even when that parent is someone like Patrick, who demonstrated what any parent would want to demonstrate for their child. So another approach we're taking is to try and let people, talk to the camera. Now, we've got a lot of filmmakers that you're going to hear from today, but for us at Vera, this is a new way of doing things. And this story that I'm about to show you is not, you're getting a sneak preview, a sneak peek. We haven't posted it yet to the Human Toll of Jail site. Because of the success of the project, we're going to be rolling out continual stories. So, Angelica, if you could play this clip.
My name is Michael. I'm 40 years old. I got in front of the judge, and the DA said all these bad things about my past, and my lawyer pointed out a couple of things. As I asked her ahead of time, could she possibly present my present after they present my past? And she went ahead and did it, and she mentioned things like my participation in the Fortune Society and, my work and my internship. I was doing an internship with a renewable energy and solar company. And she mentioned those things, and the judge heard everything and just turned around and said, since you turned yourself in, I'm gonna release you. Stay away from the complainant until the case is over, and he let me go. And I shed tears afterwards. If bail was set in my case and I could not make the bail, what would have happened to me is I would have been sent probably to Rikers Island. It would have just been a drawn-out process and a reset in mindset, having to adapt and adjust to prison life or jail life, and then, you know, the subconscious kicks in, and, you know, it would have hurt me in many ways. I would have lost my job. I would have lost my internship, and I was in Cooney at the time. So, and classes were, you know, just starting. I would have lost everything.
I would have lost everything. We decided recently that we wanted to tell another story and target specific audiences. Dolphinette's story depicted something that we uncovered in our data research, which is the number of women in jail. It's grown exponentially faster than any other incarcerated population. Between 1970 and today, 14-fold increase in the number of women in jails. I spoke before about the 3,000 counties in the U.S. Used to be 73% had no women in jails. Today, almost every jail has women. Those women are moms, 80% of them, 50% of them single moms, most of them sexually abused or traumatized. They are overlooked, as the title of our report says. But in this case, we thought, we're really trying to change this narrative. Who can we tap into? And we thought, let's reach millennial women. So while we were developing this report, one of my colleagues was working for over a period of months with a reporter for Marie Claire, a women's magazine for millennial women. It's 5 million readers on its website. And my colleague Scarlett started with explaining what's the difference between prison and jail. We're really starting with the basics and building up the story. Well, they got so interested in this topic that they did a fantastic feature article that appeared the same day we released this report. 5 million women did care about this story and these stories. Twitter exploded. Our Twitter feed, we had reached 100, well, our social media feed, Twitter and Facebook, reached 100 million Americans. That's 1 in 3 Americans who at least were aware of the problem of women in jail. So we were really having an impact by targeting that specific audience. I'm going to let Dolphinette, though, have the last word about this and bring it back to Dolphinette, because she got another chance to tell her story when we released Women in Jail. Again, the New York Times covered the story. And they used her as the opening quote and then as the kicker. I'm just going to cheat here a little bit because I don't want to get her quote wrong. This is what she said at the end of the article. I missed a lot of time. You live with a lot of regret, a lot of guilt, tremendous guilt, when you have kids in the street trying to survive. Dolphinette, Patrick, Michael, their stories really mattered. They're backing up the data that we've been able to collect and are changing the national conversation on jails. Thank you.